Today, the 11th of April, is the 70th anniversary of the day where General Choi gave us Taekwondo and began to share his vision for what this martial art could be with the world at large. We have people joining us today from right across the world, from the Americas, the Caribbean, from Oceania, from Asia, from Europe, from Africa. And we welcome one and all to this open and inclusive event for our ITF and for all ITF Taekwondo practitioners worldwide. Remember that this session and all of the ones for the full 24 hours are free to anybody who would like to join us on Zoom. You're very welcome to come along, participate, and to ask questions of the presenters. Taekwondo for us is more than just a martial art. It is a way of life. It is a philosophy. It is something that unifies us across cultures, and it is something that, given to us by General Choi in 1955, has spread around the world and created a wonderful family. For us, we have 24 hours on this celebration today online. The 24 hours represent, of course, the 24 patterns, the one life dedicated to Taekwondo. And this is our 8th presentation. And so we have for today the 8th pattern. And I would like you to enjoy with me a pattern performance from of Hwarang to celebrate this 8th session. That was Bo Ruk from the Netherlands and a wonderful performance of pattern Hwarang. Really appreciate the power, and we're showing in particular in this instance, a lot of power demonstrated by somebody who is not huge in physical stature, and it shows the applicability of Taekwondo to everybody who practices. For this session, we have an absolute pleasure because we are going to have an interview or a discussion with Master John McIlvaney from Scotland and Sbn Struan MacCallum from Austria. They're going to discuss the life, the legacy and the contribution of Honourable Grandmaster Thomas MacCallum. So if you bear with me just a moment, I will introduce our speakers and let them carry on.
Hi, can you hear me now, Master Byrne?
We certainly can. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And welcome.
Thank you for your wonderful words there. And again, it was always a pleasure to watch Bo practicing. Our patterns are looking very good and powerful as usual. I'd also like to introduce my esteemed friend from Austria. I've known this chap a long time, since he was a little child. And this is Grandmaster MacCallum's youngest son, Struan.
Hello, everyone. And hello to you, Steve.
Again, this was flung on us with short notice, so excuse me while I wing it. As you all know, Grandmaster MacCallum passed away recently, and Struan and I would just like to have a little chat, and hopefully you can get involved as well and share some memories of HGM. As you know, HGM was a created title for Honourable Grandmaster Tom MacCallum. For those that don't know, I'm going to refer him as HGM. HGM moved to Austria in the early 80s. He was a member of the UKTA Taekwondo. He was the secretary of the UKTA. At that point, Taekwondo was booming. I think I first met Tom, and there I've called him Tom already, and I said I was going to call him HGM. So you can tell I'm going to wing this. I met him in Kelvin Hall at the 1984 World Championships. And all I can remember was he was a big guy, and he's had a big voice. He was doing all the announcements, etc. it wasn't until later, Tom moved away to Vienna that year, but it wasn't until later on I got to know HGM in the 90s, when I moved to Bathgate to live with Grandmaster Sutherland, who, again, Tom's sister was Sheena's sister, Morag, and Struan's mum. She also worked in the ITF. A lot of people didn't realise that as well, but she was there every day in Vienna, being a secretary in the office as well. Okay, so HGM gave up his, I would say he didn't give up his life, okay, he dedicated his life to doing Taekwondo and helping promote it. I think, like all of us, on its 70th birthday here, we're all a little bit addicted to Taekwondo, and it can become your life, but I think it's important that you don't let it consume your life. Okay. Tom, as I say, passed away recently, and I had the fortunate pleasure of spending the last 27 years calling Tom HGM a friend. He was also my instructor, he was also my examiner, he was also honorary president of Scotland, etc. And even being so close to him, he was still a stoic and strong man that would never, I don't mean wouldn't give me any favours, but he never went out his way to help me. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. What I mean is, he was as straight as a die. He was unwavering in his politics and his love for Taekwondo. Again, I got to meet General Choi a few times and stuff. I was in Vienna at different times, but I was always that kept at arm's length, give him respect, didn't get to know him too much. But it was a pleasure just to listen to HGM when I would quiz him and ask him stories about the General, because I don't think there was anybody else that got so connected. And especially when I listened to HGM's stories, he had a lot of good times and close times with General Choi. And I think, in my personal opinion, General Choi's judgment and vision in selecting HGM was second to none. A strong, tall Scottishman who would not bend in the wind for no one. And we all know in Taekwondo, especially politically, an hour's a long time. And I think some people appreciate what HGM went through. Some people will never know. But hopefully, with the up-and-coming release of his memoirs and book, we might get a little insight, a little taste of that, Struan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello to everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. I am, of course, as you can imagine, very proud of my father. And yes, and I obviously now, well, my brother and myself, we now have the difficult job of trying to uphold this legacy, which we want to do. Yes, I mean, because you mentioned it, there is a book. He did manage to finish this book, but we didn't get it published in time. So that is something that my brother and I are currently working on. We're actually finalising it and are hoping, because I know a lot of people have also asked me directly, yourself as well, when it is going to come out. We are aiming for it to come out this year. So there are obviously a lot of very interesting stories. If you've never heard of this book, it is basically my father's memoirs, and he details not only his journey, but also quite a part of the ITF's journey, with many topics, with the Olympics and obviously the ITF office, General Choi as well, of course, many different things. So yes, because obviously that is basically his life's work, and it is very dear to us as well. And hopefully later this year we will be able to share it with everyone. Yeah.
You heard that here first, people. You know, we're eagerly awaiting this book. I know I'll get a message from Grandmaster Van Bergen asking where's the book. You know, so hopefully that'll put your minds at ease. It's not just a book, Stu, it's a historical document.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's important. There was no internet or computers back then. And Grandmaster MacCallum was a secretary in that office, and he had to endure the endless meetings and trials and tribulations of Korean masters, etc., and just dealing with the base politics from every country, probably as well. You know.
Yeah, no, I can remember a lot. I mean, the reason he was able to make this book, especially very detailed historically, is he would write journals. He kept journals. I remember as a kid, I would be going to bed, and at night in the living room, he would have his little dictaphone. He would dictate the day's events, his thoughts. Also pertaining to Gerald Choi, trying to figure out what Gerald Choi was trying to do or aim at with a certain action, etc. So that allowed well, both him and my mother, who actually wrote the book, so based on his journals and everything, all his notes, so that allowed them to really give a detailed history of basically his time, and Taekwondo, yeah.
I'll give you a little story. When we spoke there about there was no internet, etc. And I always remember HGM telling me and Morag the story of the ticker tape machine in Vienna. So if anybody knows what a ticker tape machine is, it's a message document. Basically, it punches holes in a sheet of paper, and then those holes are read and then put into language. So Park Jung-tae was in the office, and some of the North Koreans had noticed that Honourable Grandmaster MacCallum was collecting the dots from the ticker tape to use as confetti at an up-and-coming wedding of one of the other secretaries in the office. So the North Koreans asked Park Jung-tae, what is he doing? And he said, he's taking the dots to read the messages. And as we all know, if you know confetti, HGM was just gathering some confetti, you know. So you can imagine even just a day of being in that office and what it must have been like, and just some of the things that HGM had to endure. Some of them I'll never tell you, and some of them I sometimes struggle to remember. But I think the important thing for me was just being there and being able to sit with HGM and just listen. It was fascinating. I love Taekwondo, and I'm totally addicted to it. And I've came through a lot of the history. I started in 1980, but once you sat and got to hear the other side of it, as I say, an hour is a very long time in Taekwondo politics. Never mind 70 years of the name. But when Tom came to Scotland, I think it was 16 years ago, he finally got to retire. Again, I won't get into all that. It's got to be in the book. So I'll leave the Vienna office and what happened and all that in the future for the book. You heard it from Struan first. He is now a mission to complete.
It will certainly be completed, yes.
So Tom moved back to Scotland about 16 years ago.
Beginning of 2008 it was, yeah.
Struan was born in Austria. His elder brother was just born in Scotland when they moved to Austria. So it was also a big step for Morag and Tom to leave their kids and come back. But I think once you've lived in Scotland, it does take a place in your heart. And Morag always waned to come. She came to live in Bathgate with us most summers, etc. Loved spending time in Scotland. Is that right? Sure.
Yes. So they always had the plan was they moved to Vienna to be at the ITF office, and they always said at some point by the latest when they retire they would go back to Scotland. And that's ultimately what did happen. Yes, initially they thought they would only be in Austria for a year or two. That's why they didn't even go to a language course. They didn't actually learn German. They kept putting it off because we don't know how long we're going to stay. They thought it was just a temporary thing. They never ended up actually going to a language course, but obviously living in Austria for over 20 years, they managed to learn quite a lot of the language.
Pick up the banter.
Yes. Yeah, it was never a thing set in stone, and there was one point where there was even discussions that the ITF office might have been moved to Japan. So the idea was, are we going to be going to Japan? I think I was about 10 or 11 at the time. So yeah, it was quite exciting times. Even as a kid.
Can I just say, guys, Struan wasn't born in Scotland, but he's embraced Scotland more than any Scottish person. He's now playing the bagpipes He's
Yes.
a fond aficionado of whiskey, not to a great extent. But basically, them moving there helped you. I don't mean you created a better lifestyle for yourself, but I would look at that now and think you've got a great life. You live in their old house in Brunnerstrasse.
Yeah,
You know, Austria is your home now. It always has been.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, in that way, obviously for us, while we like a lot of things about Scotland, of course, and had family here. Obviously, we grew up in Austria, so that is what we're familiar with on every level of society, etc. So,
Yeah.
but I personally have always felt sort of half and half. So I enjoy both cultures and both countries. Absolutely, yeah.
That's just amazing. You know, I know Morag was always worried that you were in Austria, but I think with the recent computers and internet and other things, Morag probably spent more time talking to her children than anybody in Scotland does, because every day or night Morag would go on the phone to the boys, or she would go on the Morag joined the computer game, and I was like, Morag, you can't play computer games. And she says, no, I just sit and listen and laugh at the boys with the banter. You know, and you know that the computer made that so much more accessible for you to be in touch. And even, unfortunately, guys, Morag passed away a year before HGM. So it's been a terrible couple of years of grief, you know. And but the one thing is, she was booked to go to Austria, and didn't make it. But the boys, obviously, we raised their concern, and the boys travelled over, and they managed to get to see her one last time, which I thought was awesome. Yeah, and it certainly had a big impact. Morag, I'll always say, I wouldn't use the expletives Morag would use to describe Taekwondo now. Although it was all of her life, I think at some point.
Well, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, for me, it was pretty normal. Even as a kid, I would come home, and as soon as Dad was home, you know, we would sit on the couch. But in the evenings, they would talk about daily things that would happen. That was, that was. They talked about everything. Obviously, my mum was like a board that you could, you know, throw ideas at, and she would discuss them with him, different things. So obviously over the decades she got to know a lot about the ITF and Taekwondo. Yeah, in the very place that I live in now. So the flat that I took over from them at one point even was the ITF office. Yeah. When was that? Yeah, in the early 2000s. So that is actually the place I still live in.
Yeah. I've been there.
Very crazy. Yeah.
I'll tell you a story about Struan. I was at a party in HGM's house in Austria. Just some friends and dignitaries, etc. And I thought, where's Struan and Rory? And I looked in one of the corners of the house, there was two computers against the wall. And all I seen was the back of their heads and earphones. So the party went on. I was sleeping on the couch. I think I woke up, and I looked, and I could still see the two silhouettes. And all I could think about was, where was the toilet? You know, it was still the figure of these two kids with the headphones on and playing this role-playing game that they love to bits.
Well, that's what teenagers do. Actually, my dad didn't actually play it, but he actually enjoyed watching it as well.
Yeah.
That's something. The better the story got, the more he would like it. He would give tips, just like in Taekwondo. He didn't know anything about gaming. You know, if you gave him the control, he could then. But he didn't leave out an opportunity to still give you tips on how to proceed in the game. So, always the instructor,
yes. I'll tell you about when it came back. We were agreed that we weren't going to let HGM retire. So GMAC, my gym, we decided to make him the honorary top man. So for gradings, it was every single grading, colour belt grading, black belt grading. At the opening of an envelope, we would wheel HGM out and make him the honorary guest. But we created a tradition. Now, Tom and Morag got the train home to Scotland from Austria. They wanted to make an adventure.
Yeah.
And when they arrived back in Glasgow, they came to live with myself and Gillian at our home for about 6 months, a year. I can't remember what it was, just till they settled in. There was other issues going on politically. Like, again, Taekwondo is always good for a story. But I decided to take them to a Korean restaurant. HGM really fell in love with the place, that so much so that it was like a revisit to his times with General Choi. It was like a revisit to the cooking in the headquarters in Vienna. It was like a revisit to his trips to North Korea and different places, and sharing food with General Choi. So we created we call it the lunch club, where I would continually just arrive at HGM's house, and to Morag's joy, I would take him out for an hour to this Korean restaurant, and it's became tradition. I think we've been going, that's for 20 years now, to the same restaurant, that we know the owner, etc. Just the week after HGM's passing, I made a trip to connect again at the Korean, and the owner came out, and the first thing he said to me was, "Where's Tom?" And I couldn't believe it, and I was actually quite in shock. I was quite upset. But that just shows you the connection we made, and it was there. We always asked him stories, Stuart, and even, I don't know if you know this, but he would often talk about the youth guys and how sometimes it was a paradox. He would feel that he would maybe let us down a little bit, but then I used to reassure him, as a father myself with 4 children, that, and my kids are Taekwondo orphans as well. Fortunately, Gillian does Taekwondo full time. I work and do Taekwondo full time, so the kids are used to it. But when I was a kid, my father was my instructor. So again, like you, Struan, it was normal for me every night to get a white suit on, and I was dragged out to this place, and and as you say, the talking about it later and different things, it always kind of happened. But Tom loved to talk about Taekwondo. If there's one thing, if you'd cut HGM in half, it wouldn't have said HGM, it would have said TKD. Yeah. It's all he knew.
It's actually one thing that my brother and I, we obviously have recently been thinking about the past a lot. One thing we didn't actually realise, because as kids it was normal for us, we would go, I mean, I was age 6, 7, we would go 4 times a night, train with the adults, like today where you have the kids classes, that are more suitable. We were training with the grown-ups 4 evenings a night and on a Saturday, and only recently we were like, well, he was working full-time at the ITF office, Monday to Friday. And then he would also, four weekdays, weeknights, he would go and teach classes plus a Saturday morning. Like, I don't even know how he did it, actually. Because, I mean, and then any minute he would have in between, again, dictaphone or something, he would be thinking about things going on in the ITF world. I mean, really, really crazy workload. But you never noticed it, really. I mean, we only realise now looking back. But yeah, for a good 2 decades, he did that non-stop, really. It's quite crazy to think about.
Yeah, and you're following in those footsteps. You and your brother took up a club, you're running it well, you just love Taekwondo. And
absolutely, yes.
When you see that picture of the family, we've all got those pictures. I've got a picture of my brother, my sister, my mother, my father. I think even the dog was a green belt sitting with. and that's why we're here today, guys, after 70 years. It's a name, it's a Taekwondo is a word, is it a word? It's 70 years. Okay, and there's many different variations and versions of it. I've always been this ITF, you have as well. And thankfully, being friends with HGM, I got to find out a lot about it as well, and to be fair, he's kept me on the right tracks as well in that manner, and that's why I'm actually honoured to be here today, even sitting just talking about him.
Yes, even up to, I mean, even in old age, my brother and I, we always had a good laugh, because especially with things like electronics, he was always on the cutting edge of technology, but he still managed to mess things up and need someone to help him repair stuff, but he always tried. So in the household, he would do, my mother could write books and all the things that he did, all the accidents he had, etc. But the one thing, really, until the end, if you asked him something about Taekwondo, you know, spot on, he could just immediately talk away, give you good advice, which is what we also did. We would always ask him for advice, no matter about what. Always get really interesting perspectives. Even as I mean, you as well said that you also took gradings under him. One thing that always fascinated us was, I mean, if you're looking for something interesting or a piece of advice from him, he always said, do at least one thing during the grading that is unexpected. So he would always ask something of the gradee that was unexpected. For a personal example, I remember back in 2014, I went for my 3rd degree. My brother went for his 6th degree. So after a long time, we finally did a grading together. So we were obviously practicing, and it was about self-defense, this very one aspect. And we were doing all sorts of things that we'd practiced a lot. We were throwing each other. And so at one point, obviously, it was too much of throwing and putting people on the ground very easily, you know, by, I don't know, tripping them up and all sorts of things. So it's like, right, both go down on their knees. We're like, what? So at the grading, we were both on our knees, and he's like, continue. Like, never done it before. Like, okay, we're doing self-defense on our knees now. But I mean, I must admit, it was a lot of fun. It probably looked absolutely ridiculous, rolling around on the floor, etc., really trying to wrestle each other. But yeah, no, that is something that we have kept with us, and we still try to do. So every grading, just add a little something that might be a bit unexpected, because obviously you want to also see how people react. It's not only about that they know the moves and the pattern and how they perform, but you also want to see how they are as a person. So that is something that we will always use from him, you know, in our grading. So that's something that I can suggest to others as well.
Excellent. I always remember he had an uncanny sense, and he could ask the perfect question at the perfect time. And to such an extent, I would obviously be quite like amazed. I was like, where did he find that from? And it was relevant to the grading and the person involved in the grading and stuff. And I thought, sharp as a tack. And this is a message to all you younger listeners who have only maybe been doing Taekwondo a short time, etc. Is never forget that these people have been here and done it before you. And it was a martial art then. I couldn't start to tell you what it was like in 1980. We had to buy a karate set. We had to sew on Taekwondo badges. We had then go everywhere and explain that we weren't karate. We're Taekwondo, we do kicking. And at that point, it was a martial art. I never competed till 1983. It took me 3 years to compete because you had to learn your skills first before you could become a white belt. And HGM always told us about the toil General Joy had with competition, and I think Grandmaster Boss is the same. He'll tell you about the fights and struggles he had, try to explain to General Troy and introduce competition. And again, thankfully, these guys have persevered and we've got where we are just now. But I'll tell a quick story about the introduction of safety equipment. I'm not sure if it's a real story, so I'll do the disclaimer just now. This is the story I recall. Okay. And General Choi phoned up Grandmaster Ree and said, Jun Ree in America has safety equipment. Excuse my poor impersonations. You have to go and talk to him. So the story was that Riki Ha went to America and Jun Ree, oh yeah, there's a safety equipment. So Grandmaster Ree put the glove on us and knocked him out. And when he came to, he says, it does not work. So even then, they toiled with competition. And now all our classes are geared towards competition. And well, most of them are in high-end and elite. And guys, I'm doing a wee plug here. I'm back on at 5 o'clock. And I'm going to talk about adapted and inclusion. Okay. Tune in. It'll be worth it. But that was just a little story about that. And your father loved competitions. He loved coming to watch competitions.
Yes, absolutely.
At the end of the day, it was always a martial art. for him. And we took a class one night, and the first thing he gave us was running and jumping front kick. And I was like, we've not even done a warm-up. But that was an old school class on wooden floors, on your knuckles, developing those tools, you know, and HGM is certainly that old school guy, you know. Again, I wouldn't say it was a struggle, but if it wasn't for HGM, our ITF wouldn't be where it is today. And I'd say, looking at the market, and I always use my denim analogy here. I only wear Levi's. Some says you only wear Levi's, and I only do ITF Taekwondo. And then they'll say, what ITF? Whether it's, you know, I think we've done every acronym possible. You know, I don't think we can think any more, Stu. But I think ours is the best. And here, why? I wear Levi jeans. There's other jeans in the market that are, they're an imitation or they're a copy, or you can even buy fake jeans. But I love my Levi jeans, and I just keep wearing them. I'm not here to compete with other denims. And if you want cheaper jeans, you can go and get them anywhere. And it's the same with Taekwondo. So I used to ask HGM would be happy if Taekwondo joined together again. Thanks, Adrian, for sorting that one out. It'll be 5 p.m. UK time. 4 p.m. guys for you, okay? 4 p.m. What was I saying there?
Sorry.
About the denim.
Yes, that's what you were talking about. About Dad's opinion on merging.
Oh, on the merging.
Yeah.
And it's not always a good idea to want an ideal world and have one ITF, I don't think. And it's great that there is so many now, because it gives a lot of different people an opportunity to become a champion at their level and their group. Coming together now would make it, I think, over elite, and it would be very difficult to get a consensus and a fair opinion on rules, etc. I think we've came too far where we are now. There's too many egos and bridges to build, and that's a really difficult job. So, you know, and HGM's quite happy, because he said, ours is the best, John. We just set out our stall and people will choose. Like, you go to the shop and you'll choose what denims you choose to wear. And HGM was always stalwart that way. We shouldn't need to go about convincing people or discussion or compromising. They've stuck by their guns. We are where we are today. And yeah.
Well, I just to add to that, what I can say is what I definitely know, what he talked about a lot was preserving General Choi's legacy. And he said when it came to that point, the General Choi's wish, without a doubt, was a fully democratically led organization. And so he, I mean, I'm speaking about my father now, he always strove to make sure that is what the ITF is, because that ultimately was General Choi's dream, wish, whatever you would like to call it. But yes, so that to him was more important, I'd say, than thoughts about whether you could merge with others, etc. But as you say, I mean, I would also agree. Yes, if you advertise yourself well enough, if you show well enough what you can do, that will attract people, definitely.
I think even on this prestigious day of 70 years, I've seen on Facebook many people celebrating and wishing happy birthday, etc., and different people saying, look out for imitation, look out for, you know, and that's always going to be the way. I don't think there was any way to stop that, even back in the early days, politically, etc. And again, with government recognition and different paths that you can go down, that you've just got to put out your stall and sell your product, and hopefully people will come and train with you. I heard a statistic, that there's some Taekwondo groups, 5% of the population are doing Taekwondo, and some people within those groups are only interested in competing with that 5%. I'll open up next door to them, I'll open up here next to them, I'll open up there next to them, I'm out to stop all the other Taekwondos. I couldn't care less. the Livingston, the town I'm in, is the Bermuda Triangle of Taekwondo schools. There's like 30. I'm worried about the 95% of people that are not doing Taekwondo. That's my captive audience, and not the 5% that are doing it. So again, I'm wearing Levi jeans all the time, and that again is thanks to HGM's guidance. I'd like to get a little bit into his personal life now. Everybody thought Tom was just a giant, a big like man that they wouldn't mess with, etc. I think he was very like that in his politics as well. He didn't mince his words. He said it as it was, and again, he was unwavering. He wouldn't be easily manipulated. It was always facts and truths. You know, sometimes in Tom's company, he wouldn't say much, very little small talk, but he wasn't being ignorant or being rude to me. That was just it was nice to have silences. One of the things we loved to do was go a drive, and I'd drive past the old academy in Glasgow. You know, again, we were going to career, as you can imagine. And I'd drive around about Glasgow, and he just loved to go and see the countryside and remember stuff. I think even closer, when he became housebound, he would get me to phone him and just talk about what I was doing that day. Yeah, I work for a tooling company, so I'm delivering to British Air, and I'm driving here, I'm driving there, and he just used to love it. Just listening, he just liked to listen and have company at the end of it, and had a good story. You know, we always had such a good time. I used to frequent the Masonic burn suppers, and HGM, it was the highlight of our year. We would both talk about it for the up and coming months, and when it was around about that time, we were so excited. And again, Morag would be cheering behind our backs because we were leaving.
Yes, she would usually enjoy when she got a few hours to herself, I'll say, in the house.
Yeah,
because otherwise, with my dad around, there was always something to do.
But that was the fun in the house, Struan. It became a running, not a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was a running. I phoned your mum every day as well, as you know. I phoned her a lot, and it became really. And she'd always say, "John, when will you just come and take him out for a crane, will you?" Because Tom loved gardening at the end up, and I'll let you Struan tell you the funny story about the gardening pail. So much so he joined a volunteer group they had gardens locally, so he'd go along and help in the gardens. He also joined a pensioners group where they all met for lunch and different things. Actually, I went along a couple of times with HGM, both in Dobok, and Tom ended up taking the group rather than being a part of it, you know, because it well-travelled, you know, and this was all local people who have just got old and were keeping in activities. So we had a great time, but Tom would not sit still, you know. He only sat still when he had his water pistol. Do you want to know about this water pistol? I've got kids and I love water pistols, and I always buy the top of the range ones. So when I entered HGM's house this day, I thought, whose is that? That's an absolute beauty of a water pistol. That's the best water pistol I've ever seen. It was the box was empty though, and I was like, and HGM was sitting at the back patio doors like this with a gun. And I thought, what's he doing? And the door was open. There it's there, John. Right, and he was shooting magpies, squirrels, and cats because they were stealing the food for the birds. You know, absolutely. I was like, that's amazing.
Water pistol, yeah.
Best water pistol ever. Struan mentioned the electronics earlier. We had a motto between us: he with the most toys wins. Right? And Tom had everything imaginable. Right? Even this thing for building brick walls. Right? The funniest thing was when he had a Leatherman, you know, the Swiss Army knife, you know, all the attachments, and it got taken off from the airport, and it was like, oh my goodness, it was like the end of the world losing this Leatherman too, you know. But I'll let Struan tell you about the pail.
Well, yes. So, I mean, even in the garden, it was actually quite interesting because my parents, they would sort of split it up who got what area, because my mother, she liked to have it more wild, so everything grow in as it would in nature, you know, not interfere too much. Look after it, yes, but don't interfere too much. Dad, on the other hand, he liked to have lovely, colourful flowers, you know, and maybe a bit more. What would you say? Well, maybe a bit more orderly, I suppose. Maybe more curated, the garden in a way. And so on this one occasion, he needed a pail for his garden work. And once Amazon came around, that for him was the ultimate thing, because he could get everything on Amazon, and that was wonderful. My mother liked it less so, because every day Amazon parcels would arrive. So he said, right, I need a pail for the gardening. Okay. And when it finally arrived, I've got a photo of it somewhere. When it finally arrived, it was a toy version. So it was about this size, instead of about this size, so you could really use it in the garden. It was about this size. So I've got a photo of my dad standing with this tiny little toy pail. And that is a good example of the things he would do every day. And, usually my mum would spend a lot of her days just shaking her head, because she couldn't believe all the things he would get up to. Yeah, but because you mentioned like the gardening and such, it's really interesting. He could never join something and just, you know, let it happen as it is, or a group be as it is, because he also joined the local bowling club at Stonyburn. And again, pensioners just want to have a good time and just have this little bowling club. And then he came in and he's like, right, they've not really got organised, and, you know, we need bylaws and this, that. So immediately went in this basically ITF mode, right? We need to put this all down in writing, and it all needs to be orderly, and we need people running this, etc., etc. So within a very short time, he immediately, I don't know if he actually was the president of the bowling club, but it's funny how he couldn't just join a group and just, you know, just be one of the guys. You know, if we saw something that needed to be, let's call it, corrected, or something that you could influence in a positive way, you just had to. It's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, a bowling club is, you get indoor and outdoor bowls in Scotland, and they're probably more political than Taekwondo clubs are, if you could believe that. and I don't think Tom went back after a while, didn't he?
Yeah, I can't remember what the reason was. I mean, I don't think it was that. It was
they wouldn't comply. So, guys, I'm just going to have a look at the messages.
There was a question there from Roy Rolstad, Master John and Sbn Struan, just around. Where did the Honourable Grandmaster start training his Taekwondo, and when?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, he started in Singapore, actually. So my father, he was in the RAF, the Royal Air Force. He was an administrator there. For about 10 years, he was a corporal in the RAF. Like I say, he was very good at administrative duties, and he ended up being stationed in many places around the world, but one of them was Singapore. And he enjoyed playing football and generally just sports. None of that was available at the base where he was stationed, but they said, oh, there's this new thing, Taekwondo, you know, it's a bit like karate, you can go and try that out. And so that is what he did. He started in 1967, if I'm not mistaken, and I think he got his black belt in 1969. So he was training in Singapore. Yeah, he was stationed, I think it was Changi Air Base, where he was stationed. Yes, yeah, so Singapore, and then obviously when he came back to the UK, that is when he, founded his own club. I hope that answers the question.
And a question from Grandmaster Vitalia there, just who did he train under in Singapore?
I would have to look up all the names. I definitely know that the person he graded to black belt under was Master Han Cha Kyo. But there was at least one other gentleman, but at this point I can't think of the name right now. I could look it up. So if whoever wants to know, if you can drop me a message or anywhere on social media, etc., I would be happy to follow up on that. Yeah.
Any other questions, Adrian? Is there?
Well, we'll give everyone a moment to write them. I just thought I might share? Oh, actually, we have from Grandmaster Vitali there. Was it Grandmaster Lee Byung-moo by any chance?
The name certainly sounds familiar. I would have to check. I can gladly check and get back to you, sir, on that. But I'll say for now, I'm pretty sure that sounds very correct. Yes.
Was HGM responsible then? I know Ricky Ha came through the RAF, etc., to the UK in '67, and that's when HGM came back to Scotland and joined the UKTA. Was he part of bringing Grandmaster Lee over here, or was he?
That I'm unfortunately not too familiar with that part of the thing. I can only tell you that because he was such a good administrator in the RAF, that is something that the Grandmaster Lee picked up on, and that is how he was then proposed to work at the ITF HQ in Vienna, because like we've got this guy who's really good at administrative things, etc. So that is how that came about. Yeah. But like I say, with the UK, I'm not too familiar with those details, unfortunately. Some are in the book, though. I can tell you that.
When and where you can see that, but from
for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That was also in Singapore. Again, I don't want to spoil it anyway. That is also in the book. So, but yes, it was in Singapore. So during his time there.
So that's another plug for the book, people.
I'm just making it worse for myself because I'm just putting myself under more stress to bring this book out.
Can you tell us about the relationship between General Choi?
Yes. Well, as far as I can tell, obviously I've only seen a part of it, but yes, I've heard a lot of stories. Famously, my father would share hotel rooms with General Choi. I was thinking about it before when we were talking about advertising your skill, etc. General Choi liked to do it a bit too much because I know on at least one occasion my dad had to then explain to the people working at the hotel that no, they're not actually trying to take the building down or something. That is just General Choi's morning routine, waking up, punching walls. Obviously, people, as you can imagine, in other hotel rooms, other guests, they were complaining because they kept hearing all this bumping. It was General Choi. So my dad witnessed that firsthand. One of his favourite things, he said that obviously he travelled with General Choi around the world to many seminars, championships, of course, as well, where they also enjoyed a lot of wonderful meals. One of his favourite things to do was, and he thinks General Choi also liked it quite a lot, they would just sit in a hotel room with a pot noodle. You know, just boil some water, put in the pot noodle, and they would just sit, eat their pot noodles, and discuss about all sorts of things. Yeah. So he would also tell stories about him actually being General Choi's bodyguard. Obviously, he was a bit taller than he was, a bit bigger, just a wee bit. But yes, that was also one of the many things he did. Obviously, in the office in Vienna, I got to witness that as well, because my brother and I, during summer holidays, for instance, we would just go to the ITF office and play. So we sometimes would get to see that as well, see General Choi as well. So I feel very fortunate now, of course, because I'm able to also tell my students about these experiences. But yes, so we got to also see a very, very sort of, familiar, sort of in a family environment, General Choi, because we were more relaxed in those situations. I also experienced some phone calls my father had with General Choi, and they could be quite tense as well, because General Choi, when he had his mind set on something, you know, he communicated that straight, and that was a bit difficult to fulfill sometimes. There's another question here.
There's another question. What was Grandmaster MacCallum's opinion of General Choi's skill, and did he know why General Choi didn't often teach in his stovework? With my discussions with HGM, and General Choi will often say, once you're not able to do it yourself, you have to teach other people. And General Choi was always conscious of being picked up, and sometimes HGM told me that he would obviously answer ambiguously quite a lot of questions so as not to tie it down or become. He knew Taekwondo was still growing in and still developing. And General Choi was the founder. I think he had every right to stand in a shuttle tie and demonstrate and make himself that standout figure?
I must say I can't recall my father talking about that specific thing ever, so I couldn't give an answer. I actually have never wondered about the question myself of why it wasn't. There's something that's just very obvious. You always see him in the suit, and it's like, yeah, it's General Choi. That's just how he enjoyed teaching. Honestly, again, I can't recall my father mentioning that. And as far as his skill, again, I can't recall him talking about his skill. He would talk more about himself as a person, how just General Choi's presence when he would walk in the room. And that is something that I tell my students to this day, especially to encourage maybe some of the smaller students, because they might lack self-confidence. I would love telling them about General Choi, how this, you know, relatively smaller person would walk in a room, everyone's silent, everyone immediately just, you know, on full attention, etc. His presence is something that my father would talk about a lot. Yeah. Is there any other questions?
Is there another question?
I can't see that. Yeah.
No, jump to.
We might make that one of our last ones. Did the Honourable Grand Master speak Korean?
No, he did not. No.
Only in Taekwondo speak.
Yeah. Beyond the Taekwondo terminology, maybe individual words, but no, you could not speak Korean, no.
And we might just finish on one more from Roy Rolstadt. Struan, what was your first or strongest memory of the General?
Well, one very fond memory I have is just going for a meal with him. It's a little restaurant in Vienna. Actually, my father wasn't even there that day. It was with my mother. It was the people working at the ITF office. They went for this meal. General Choi was there as well, and we just went along. And even so there was a little just a little mat that you put the plates on typically, and General Choi signed it for me. I've actually got it framed at home. That's a very fond memory. That nowadays I look back, it's quite crazy to think that he just signed that for me. I've got another one where I mean, it's Easter now, so it's quite fitting. I've got a photo where General Choi presented my brother and myself with little chocolate Easter bunnies. It's very, very, looking at those kind of photos nowadays, it's in Vienna airport, which I know a lot as well. It's very strange looking back on these photos because I realise how bizarre they are, actually.
There's no camera phones then, and you would have taken so many memories, but that's even more.
At the same time, because it was very normal for us, because we would just go to the ITF office, you know, after school maybe or so, and just see people from all around the world there, and General Choi as well, yeah.
Gentlemen, I would just like to thank you on behalf of everybody in attendance and on behalf of the ITF for stepping up at the last moment as well to share your thoughts and your memories on of course, your father, Struan, and your good friend, Master John McIlvaney, on a person who has a historical presence with the ITF, a very memorable figure to those of us who've met him, and just a lovely kind of sharing of memories and sharing of stories, and we really do appreciate that. For everybody who's on the call, we will be rejoining in about 4 minutes' time. We might leave you with just the video that was on the ITF YouTube channel in relation to Honourable Grand Master MacCallum, and we'll show that, and then we'll rejoin in 4 minutes.
Adrian,
thank
can
you
I just
again.
say one thing? Adrian,
yes.
Can I say one thing? For all you young guys out there, and all you new starts, etc., never forget these people and where they came from. When you see the older grandmasters, etc., walking into rooms and stuff, they've all lived good lives, but please appreciate and remember the sacrifice that was given, and the sacrifices that are still being given as instructors, etc. And again, it's important to keep their memories alive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Much appreciated.
Bye.